Okay.
Oh, yeah, I could see that. So, the thing about WZRD, and I have to wonder who got most pleasure out of it. Was it us, the DJs, or was it our listening public who were like utterly confused by what we were doing? You
Good
know?
question. So I'll answer this a couple ways. One, I had the opportunity to meet some of the listeners, and remember a couple of the live events that we actually promoted. And I forget what it was, but man, we definitely had the weirdest audience because I don't remember that we did much promotion outside of mentioning we were going to do a picnic. This was part of with the less thing, and we had the weirdest people there. I mean, talk about your freaks of nature, and not to say that's bad because you're happy that you got an audience, but man, that was like it was like you wonder. I remember a couple times I get this one guy who would call, and he offered to break all the windows in his apartment if I would play this one thrash song. I remember forget what band it was. And I said, "Dude, you don't have to do that. I'll just play the song anyway."
Do you
I'll
know?
break all the windows right now, man. Just play it. I'll put the phone up to the radio.
Well, so we were the Misfit Toys broadcasting to the Misfit Toys.
Right. But you know, I always had a fascination with underground because I have a brother who's 12 years older than me, and he used to collect underground comics from the 60s and
Oh,
had a whole
wow.
collection of those. And that's actually how I connected with Les because I saw him carrying one of those. I think Zippy the Pinhead. From that. And I said, "Hey, you know about Zippy?" But anyway, how I found out about the Wizard was I was crossing the street somewhere, maybe on the west side, I think by Six Corners, Milwaukee Avenue and all that. And for some strange reason, I saw that someone had, with a pen, wrote graffiti on the light change box, little green box that stood out. And it said, "Listen to the Wizard, 88.3 Sunday Morning Nightmare."
Sunday Morning
That's what
Nightmare.
it
That's Terry
said.
Nelson's show.
Yeah, that's right. And I never knew about Terry or the show or the Wizard. But the fact that it was there, I took note of that and I go, oh, 88.3 left of the dial. I got to check that out. Because I already knew left of the dial, but I hadn't gone that far left yet.
And there
Yeah,
you were.
that was
So
it. And,
the Saturday counterpart to Sunday Morning Nightmare was Teenage Party.
Dougie.
With little Dougie, yeah.
Yeah.
So he would follow my slot. And the thing I remember most about little Dougie, he'd come in with this little case of 45s. And for people who don't know what those are very small vinyl records that play like one song on each side. They were called singles. Anyway, so little Dougie would come in, and while I was wrapping up my paperwork and stuff for my slot, he would like go over my stuff like a teacher who's like going over a test. And he'd point out all the errors I made, and he made me do stuff over.
Are you talking about like we used to have the little, what do they call those? The little sheets where we had to write down the song? The log.
The
L-O-G.
log
The
sheets.
logs. Yeah. Which it probably everything automated now. Well, it's pretty cool that you had a tutor. I mean, you had a really good one in that case.
Yep.
So my first show, and I don't know how that ended up like that, was with Billy, which I've communicated with. Billy lives now in Kansas. And I didn't quite get clear the signal. He goes, "I can't make the 50th party." I said, "Well, you're excused, dude. You live in Kansas." But we still can do the Once Wizards podcast. And I wasn't sure if he took it seriously or what, But anyway, we were doing a show after Terry's, right? Yeah, that was after Terry's show. And we called it the Quick Rad Sausage Show. And the only way we named it because we were just. The funny story was because Billy's last name is Kielbasa.
Kielbasa, which is a type of sausage.
Yeah, and Ratner. And there was somebody named Dave Quick who we never met, but through the reader's ad, we were looking for someone to join in to make a show happen with us. Said he never showed up. But we decided Quick Rat Sausage would be a good name for a show. And it was like this Cheech and Chong, fireside radio theater type quasi joke around, play some music, figure out our next sketch type show.
You know, speaking of your name, do you recall speaking to Rat Scabies, the drummer of the Damned, at the restroom at Exit? Do you remember that story?
Oh, vaguely, but you're going to remind me now. Put it all to perspective. I remember the exit, and I remember they were there.
So we did a WZRD press party for the Damned. I think that's how it was framed.
Oh, you tell everyone what the Damned was if they don't know already. The Damned.
Yeah, so the Damned is one of the seminal punk bands of all times, and they're still going strong. They're still completely bratty.
The original members like
Captain Sensible, Dave Anion, and Rat Scabies, the drummer.
Wow.
So we did this press party, and I was carrying around this tape machine that probably permanently damaged my spine because it was so heavy.
Yeah,
I was walking around shoving a microphone in people's faces.
It was a Marine.
Exactly, yeah, it was a Marine, yeah. And so there's like 35 batteries in it. And so I started off with Captain Sensible. He's very approachable, friendly. Had a great chat with him. And then I went up to Dave Vanian, and he basically told me to F off. I don't know if expletives are allowed on the podcast, so I'm playing it safe here.
Yeah, play it safe. Why not? Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so we wanted to get more of the captain's time, but it was really loud in the club. He went into the bathroom, so you and I went into the bathroom with him, and we were interviewing him, and I even remember like some of the interview. And then in walks Rat Scabies. And so we're thinking, oh yeah, you can join the interview. And Rat Scabies made it very clear that he was only there to relieve himself. So anyway, what I remember is that you went up to Rat Scabies and you said, yeah, my name's Ratner. And Rat Scabies said, well, mine's made up.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
I also remember that Rat Scabies threatened to beat the crap out of me for some reason, but I don't know why. I was just such a smart ass in those days, and I probably said something stupid.
Or because you kept insisting to interview him, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, shoving this penile microphone in his face. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but
anyway,
Captain Sensible, he was cool, and he was sensible, which is really pretty cool.
He's a gentleman. Proper gentleman.
Weren't you also part when we were interviewing Fear? Weren't you with us when we did that?
I wasn't there for Fear.
Yeah.
Tell me, did you interview Fear?
Yeah.
Talk about it.
Well, they got us in trouble, if you remember, because they took a spray paint can, and they went outside and they sprayed Fear on the sidewalks and on someone's garage, which I think they got caught. And they traced them back to where they hid out at the radio station. So, but otherwise, they were very approachable, much older. They were obviously a 60s generation that figured to jump on our generation's bandwagon. And I was very particular about them, but back then about that kind of stuff. But I said, wait a minute, man, stick in your own corner. But they were like wanting to really be like Fear. They were. Yeah, but I mean, they were really kind of down there as guys and just sort of like, and then SPK, they also came to the station too.
SPK, and then I also remember almost killing Pete Shelley on Lakeshore Drive.
Yeah, we got to tell that story, but let's rewind a little bit about his history too. But what's the other question I was going to ask you about? Oh, let's finish about Exit. So anything else real quick you want to mention about that?
Just that we caught some tape of interviewing Captain Sensible. Captain Sensible gave us the most time. Dave Vanian completely ignored us. Oh, I think I had about 5 seconds of conversation with the bass player, Paul Gray. He was rather drunk. And Scabies starting to kill me. So.
Yeah, which would have been great to have that on tape. By the way, do you still have that recording or that cassette anywhere?
I was just thinking I might have it in some storage box. I would have to dig for it.
During COVID, there was a panic mode because I mentioned I still have my place in LA, and my storage had all those cassettes, really boxes. It must have been, I don't know, 3 or 4 rows, stacks of boxes of just cassettes. And there was a few period of time where I thought I was going to sell. And I had to empty all that out. And I threw all of it out because I wasn't going to ship it back. I mean, cassettes that sat out in the sun and all that stuff, weather in LA and the hot.
The oxides wear off.
Yeah. Well, anyway, my one exit story related to the Quick Rat Sausage Show, and you might recall this. So this is probably October '81. Could have could have been '82. I think it had to be '81. So yeah. So we decided to do a live Halloween party at Exit, which they were totally hip and cool about, and a huge crowd showed up. But I don't think it was because of the wizard. It was because Exit was having a Halloween party on Halloween. So Billy and I, set up on stage, and the DJ stopped playing the music. Everybody stopped to see what was going on. And rather than me thinking we ought to have a contest for the best dressed costume, right? We start doing our show live, trying to do it from the wizard, from there. And I don't know who was back at the station, but what immediately happened was people started throwing shit at the stage and yelling out, and it got so out of control. The DJ just started playing music again because they thought the crowd was going to it just wasn't going to happen.
Mike, you just cause trouble wherever you go.
Just following.
Causing riots and. But again, that speaks to the philosophy of the wizard as well. It's like for other stations that probably would have been unthinkable. Of course, you talk about Steve Dahl, and he was blowing up disco records at Comiskey Park.
And that's controversial. Yeah, so if you guys don't know your history, well, everyone's kind of heard about it now, the disco demolition, yeah. So I was there for that. That was history in its own way. But we can read, now that we're older, we can read into it in different levels. I think even Steve at this point, he actually did kill disco, but there's something to be said about just the youth of that time wanting to everyone wants to find their own sound and what they relate to. And not to say that listening to our older brother's music, which was what the Loop, that radio station that I was interning for, was what it meant for us. Jimi Hendrix wasn't really our generation, nor were the Stones. We could appreciate that music, we could have a love for it, but it wasn't our generation making that music, it was somebody else's. So the 80s came to represent, in the late 70s, for those part of the punker generation or hardcore, you began to drift towards something that you could relate to because there was a message behind the music that was perhaps a bit more current to the times that we're living in. And that's what drew me in.
Yeah, you make me think about being younger and socially awkward. So this is going to be very personal, but I dated girls who liked disco. And I just couldn't do disco. Couldn't do the clothes, couldn't dance, couldn't do the hair. I really wanted to be with those girls, but disco was like a gate that I had to get through.
Well,
when punk came along,
everybody hated disco, right? But I secretly kind of liked it. Now, here's the weird thing. My older sister, who was 8 years older, took me to New York in the 70s, and I got to see Studio 54 because she knew the bouncers and all the people. So I got in and I saw what nobody at that age should see, which was tight wire acts, people doing naked stuff on stage. I was like, what the heck is all this? But I would say the true essence of disco going to England and the 60s clubs and how it evolved to the 70s, and then maybe it malformed. I mean, everyone talking to, Rod Stewart, everybody started getting into it. And so there was a sellout period of disco music, I think, that tipped it for Steve Dahl and other people. Plus, Steve's story personally was, he said, hey, I got fired from my last radio station because they changed the format. And that's the reason why I hate disco. I lost my job because of it. And now I'm taking revenge. I said, but hey, you got a better gig now than you had before if you hadn't stayed at that station. He goes, yeah, but that station was where I lived before I moved to Chicago. He was out in California. Anyway, hey, we're at the half-hour mark. So I want to say, Mark, we could continue this, or we could do a part 2 at some point, or you take a break, or continue for a little bit.
I would vote for a part 2.
I'd say that'd be pretty good. This has been pretty great, man. It's great to catch up. This is actually our first Once Wizard official recording, and how fitting it was because you get the whole backdrop of what we're trying to do here, and to bring our pals back together. So let's talk.